Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Sportser Life podcast. My name is Charlotte.
And I am Chuck Mounts Jr.
And we have a very exciting multi-part series for you.
All right, Charlotte. Now tell us about tell us about this event that we went to.
So we went down to St. Louis for the Disabled Hockey Festival, and we got to see multiple different types of disabled hockey and meet and talk to a lot of different people, both players, coaches, and off-ice support systems.
It was fantastic.
Who are helping the game of sports in all different ways.
Or the game of hockey specifically.
The game of hockey in all different ways.
Yeah, and I think it was a really unique experience. And, I'm not sure people realize exactly how accessible hockey is. It's hockey has, there have been a lot of adaptive techniques used to make hockey very accessible.
Yeah, and I think in part 2 you'll hear some of those stories, which are, and in part 1.
Yeah, definitely.
Part 1 is going to be more from the support staff perspective, and in part 2 you will hear from the coaches and the players themselves.
Yeah, and we may have another part, but we'll wait to see on that.
Yeah.
But there was so much content from this event. It was a fabulous event. I believe it was at the Centene Center in St. Louis.
Yeah, it was at multiple facilities, actually.
Oh, that's right.
But
yes.
There was only so much time in the day, and things were going on at the same time, so we spent time at the Centene Community Ice Center, which is where the NHL's St. Louis Blues practice. And it's a state-of-the-art facility, and it's just absolutely amazing. And I think you will actually hear a little bit about facility later on from a very special guest who is directly involved in
things.
So stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned for that. That was a great conversation. So let's go ahead and kick it off. I think our audience is going to want to hear these interviews, maybe more than they want to hear us. So in this first part, we're talking to several people. The first person that we're talking to is a master's candidate, a master's student at St. Louis University, which is my dad's alma mater. And so we'll go ahead and let's kick off that interview. So hi, my name's Chuck Mounts Jr. and my daughter here,
Charlotte.
And we're doing a new podcast called Sports Our Life, where we talk about the intersection of athletes, inclusivity, activism, and we're here today at the USA Hockey Disabled Hockey Festival, and so we have a guest with us today, and if you could just take a second, introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Colton Doherty. I'm a master's engineering student at St. Louis University, and I work in a lab that's focused on kind of the intersection of people and technology. The lab's called the Chrome Lab. It stands for Collaborative Haptics, Robotics, and Mechatronics. And I work a bit on kind of the accessibility of sports, specifically in the visually impaired sector. And at this event, we have a project that's focused in blind ice hockey and improving the sport.
Okay, that's awesome. So tell me a little bit about how you got involved in the Chrome Lab.
Yes, so I graduating from undergrad, I was actually very much interested in like medical devices and research and development, R&D of those types of devices. Just because I became an engineer because I wanted to make things that made lives better. That's what I wanted to do from the beginning. And actually, in my search for kind of research and development job in the medical sphere, I was looking at St. Louis University, a very much medical kind of school, and I kind of just stumbled upon this lab, being this lab that's very much focused on people and technology, and also I heard about this project with sports. I personally didn't play ice hockey growing up. I actually played like roller hockey around in the neighborhood, but my main sport was like baseball. Also played some basketball and soccer. And for me, sports kind of shaped very much who I was, just as a person. And so when I heard about the ability to work on a project that could give more people that ability to grow in that sector, in that section, and be able to, have more access to the importance of sports and things like that, I just kind of jumped on and got really excited. So that was in 2021. Spring of 2021 is when I accepted the offer to come here to St. Louis to work on this project.
Okay, great. So tell us a little bit. So you mentioned a little bit about what the Chrome Labs is about. Do you know how they got started and how just a little bit about how the history there?
Yeah, so the Chrome Lab was started by my advisor. Her name's Jenna Gerlowitz. She is also an engineer by trade, and the lab actually kind of started out of her main project, which is creating more accessible visual graphics via touchscreens through the use of vibration, right? Mm-hmm. So in the visually impaired community, and just in general in the world, there's been a huge shift towards the graphical communication of information, right? Graphs, pictures, things like that. And, especially COVID really showed this problem too, with like now technology all being virtual on iPads and things like that. And, the current solutions, which are like Braille and kind of dot plots and screen readers, don't really work great with like graphics, right? And graphs and, learning these STEM concepts. So her project is to basically can we take the touchscreen's use of like vibration, its ability to vibrate, and can we have it where an individual can like run their finger along a graph and that touchscreen will vibrate in ways where it can communicate like that graph to basically, so the focus is STEM accessibility. And that was her project when she was actually a grad student. So that project kind of expanded into what is the Chrome Lab, because she had, experience, designing devices with visually impaired individuals, and that kind of just expanded into a bunch of other projects. So we have projects ranging from, like what I mentioned, and also kind of projects in working with both deaf and blind individuals. Mm-hmm. So essentially their entire language is through touch. And so we have a grad student in our lab who works on a project that's focused on how do we kind of create like a communication system like a cell phone where you can talk to someone in a different room, but if you can't hear or see, just communicate through the sense of touch. So essentially I touch something on my body, I touch a sensor, someone else feels that same tapping on them so they can communicate like through rooms. And we have projects all kind of throughout that.
Yeah, that's really exciting.
Yeah. Stuff I didn't know about, but it's really cool.
Yeah.
Can you tell us specifically about how the blind hockey technology works?
Yeah, sure. So currently they use, I call it a glorified tin can. So the sport actually started with, they'd have a tin can with little metal balls in it. So when they'd hit the tin can, it would rattle. And they've slightly upgraded now to basically a thin sheet metal puck. I believe it's 22 gauge metal steel with like 6 ball bearings inside. And it's about 3 times the size of a normal hockey puck, and a lot heavier too. And so this puck, basically when it's hit, it rattles. And so players are able to localize the puck based off that sound. Additionally, some of the players, have lower levels of vision. So they are able to see some things, especially like the boards and other players. And some players are actually able to track the puck based off sight because it is so big and it moves a little bit slower. But there are some players who track it only on sound. The goalies especially, who either have to be completely blind or have to wear a blindfold, only localize the sound via its noise. So that's why it's important that the puck is kind of always making noise, so that those players who do rely only on the audio feedback of it can localize it.
Yeah.
Could you explain like how maybe some of those players who don't see as well as the others could not run into like the wall? I don't know.
So this is from my experience talking to them. Some other players, the actual players, I think would have a better viewpoint of this. From what my understanding is, most of the players, or at least a lot of the players, especially the offensive players, have visual diagnostics or diagnoses that they do have some level of functional vision, so they see enough to be able to see other players and boards, not necessarily be able to see the puck. Goalies are always specifically blind because that is one position you don't have to skate around, right? And you can kind of touch the goalpost to reorientate yourselves. So that is why that position is kind of like reserved for fully blind individuals, so they do have a position. There are a couple players, I think, who have extremely low levels of vision or are blind and actually do play like defensive positions, which is extremely impressive because, they do basically localize everything, not just the puck, other players and the boards, just based off sound and feel. And honestly, it's magic to me. I'm not quite sure how they do that. I think there's a player from Chicago who's really good at it. It's incredible, his spatial awareness. Kind of without, I think, being able to see or being able to see very little. But yeah, to be honest with you, I'm not exactly sure how they do it. It's quite crazy.
What kind of challenges have you faced just in your role with what you're doing?
So with working on, we're trying to kind of develop solutions to make this kind of old-fashioned, old tin can, kind of upgrade tin can even better by making, it more durable, as well as kind of incorporating some electronics so it doesn't, so it does make sound when it stops moving, like we mentioned, so the players who only use audio can still localize it. And one of the challenges we faced is, blind ice hockey is a sport, and in any sport, it is extremely reliant on, sense of habit. And with sense of habit, when there's something like that, people are extremely resilient to change, like anyone would be in a sport, right? So as I mentioned, I grew up baseball my whole life. I always use the example about 2 or 3 years ago, the MLB tried to shrink the seams down by 0.5 millimeter, and everyone lost their minds. No one would shut up about it for months. It was like the league was going to shut down, right? And it was interesting is, that's how any sport is, including blind ice hockey. So a lot of times we'll have these technological, very cool technology ideas or technological improvements that we think could improve the sport a lot, but it's a very different stimulus, right? And there's a lot of hesitancy towards that, rightfully so, because it's different because players are so used to what already exists. And so that's one of the biggest challenges we face. And the other challenge we face is, to produce kind of constant noise, you need some type of electrical power. In blind ice hockey, it is wet, cold, and a ton of forces all the time, which are 3 of the worst cases for electronics. So the durability becomes another challenge too. But I think that the most important challenge to me is, the ability of creating solutions that are better and make the sport more accessible and allow more people to play it and improve in it, while still, understanding that people have been playing the sport for a long time, so you have to account for that, and any change you do make kind of has to be kind of gradual. And that's kind of why we've adopted kind of more of a pseudo solution approach, as in, whatever we create can be used as a tool, not a permanent replacement, or at least not a replacement right now, but a tool that can eventually lead to kind of a more permanent solution.
Sure. So I guess when we're trying to implement some of these new technologies, is there a particular way that you try to go about testing it? Not only just to test the technology itself, but that was my initial question, was how do you test the technology? But then adding in the change, right? This is going to be something new. So what are some things that you guys have done to really sort of try to make that happen more smoothly?
So again, as I mentioned, our testing process is focused around the idea. I've kind of termed it like sneaking in change, as in we're trying to change things to make, the puck more durable, so they have to buy less, and, for it to make sound when it stops moving. But we want to keep that sound pretty much the same. We want the size of the puck to be about the same. So everything we do, I want to kind of sneak it in a way where the players feel about the same stimulus, or they hear, see, feel, whatever about the same stimulus. It's delivered just in a slightly different way, either making it more efficient or more accessible to other individuals. So our testing is all focused around basically, we take what they currently use, and then we take what we've made, and we just compare them, and basically any difference is highlighted, and we try to avoid those differences. So, for example, acoustic testing is a big thing we do. And so we basically look into, two different, for versions or two different ways to look at the acoustics. One being is like overall loudness, like is it about the same loudness? That's important, and so we look at that. The other thing we look at is how does the sound like actually sound, especially with like frequencies and tones, and especially in a hockey rink where the acoustics, right, are very complicated and there's a lot of echoes. It's very important that you have, certain types of tones echo better or worse. And so we do testing to make sure that whatever we create, either electronics or whatever like physical mechanical modifications we make to their current puck, have similar enough acoustics. And that's kind of what we do at first, to benchtop to see if we're relatively close. And if we're somewhat close to the mark, then our approach is to get what's known as like an MVP, or a minimal viable product, right, out to kind of teams as quick as possible. We work closely with the St. Louis Blues Blind Ice Hockey Club since we're placed in St. Louis. And so basically the second, as soon as we can, we try to get stuff in their hands. So in my terms, they can tear it to shreds. Because when it is user-centered design, it's a tedious process, and it's important to get stuff into users' hands because they'll tell you things that you never thought of, and it's awesome too that this community is also very passionate. So they'll definitely be constructive about it, but they'll let you know kind of their critiques pretty early and pretty clearly. And so that's a pretty good way to figure that out.
That's cool.
And with any science project, things are gonna fail, and you'll have to do something again. Try again.
So I guess the question is, so how can people learn more about Chrome Labs and what you do and so forth? How can they?
So we have a lab website. If you just Google Chrome, so CHROME lab, and then it's also helpful to throw in a SLU there. So Chrome Lab, SLU being SLU, because you might see, I think there's a Chrome Music Lab somewhere. That's not us. Just it's CHROME and then SLU. It gives you Chrome SLU, and it's a site where we have a bunch of different projects we talk about, and we go a little bit into the Blind Ice Hockey Puck project, but you can learn about all the other kind of work we do working with individuals with impairments, visual impairments specifically.
And I thought of this as earlier in the interview, and I just remember this question asked. But you came into the Chrome Labs. You mentioned that sports has been a big part of your life. You wanted to help people with technology. Has been working. So this may be a loaded question because your boss may listen to this, but how is everything going for you in that regard, and being a good fit and being able to work on what you're doing, and has anything surprised you that you hadn't thought of before you started working at the Chrome?
It's definitely been a good fit, and I definitely enjoy it. It's a really cool experience to be able to combine like the technical engineering side and being able to do kind of these cool like acoustic studies that are like very technical, and like I'm able to do some like interesting math when like analyzing how we're affecting the acoustics. But it's also interesting to be able to kind of look at the other side and just be able to look at a much more of a sports side of saying like, all right, here's the ball or the puck or whatever, it moves like this, it sounds like this, and being able to kind of take my experience of like understanding that like when you are playing a sport is you don't think, right? You're not, if you think you lose, you're too slow, right? So there's this idea of like all these habits and these habits of how used to you are of very specific things, and to kind of transfer that between like the testing, like I mentioned, and being able to look at that. That is really interesting. I really enjoy it. One thing, it didn't necessarily surprise me. I kind of knew it going in, but it's definitely very apparent, is just that, as I mentioned before, it's sports are very much habit based, and when it comes with like user design, you do have to be users are the experts, so we focus on designing with them, as in they're a part of the design process, which is it's extremely important and it's extremely valuable, and that's how you create products that people will actually want to use. And that's how you actually do something that hopefully matters a bit. But that process is for like people looking to go into the field, the process is tough. It can be it's very important to get honest feedback and make sure you have open lines of communication with users, and you want to be clear to them that like I want no holes barred, don't spare feelings here. This is a conversation about how do we make things better, what's wrong with this, how do we improve. and it can be a bit discouraging sometimes. It is, because it is important to receive that feedback. But, you know, if you spend a lot of time on something and you have a lot of hopes for it, and they kind of pull, you know, they bring up a point of something you didn't think about, and it kind of makes that idea you had pretty obsolete. It can be disappointing sometimes, but I would say it is counterbalanced with the fact of, like, when you do come up with something that people like, and, like, people are like, that is so cool, I can't wait to use that, or, like, they use it and they go, like, that really helps. I think it is, you know, it's worth it. It's just something you got to be aware, like, going in. But overall, I mean, I think it's a really cool fit, and wherever I do end up kind of working my full career, still kind of figuring that out, whether it's like in the entrepreneurship side, like creating my own like kind of devices, my own company, or working for like a bigger company doing R&D. I would very much like to stay in like the haptics, medical device space, somewhere where I know whatever I'm making is directly improving someone's life, and somewhere where I can work with people to kind of help develop these products.
I guess that leads into the last question. You're in grad school right now. Do you have plans for when you graduate?
I have like 3 plans, not sure which one is it's going to fall into. I'm looking into kind of, so I'm from St. Louis, and I'm not from St. Louis. I'm from Lake St. Louis, which is like 45 minutes west of downtown. But the past couple of years living in the city, I've been very, it's been an interesting experience to kind of, you know, live very much in the city that I grew up so close to, but didn't spend a lot of time in. And it's kind of made me very passionate about doing what I can to help the city. Just because it does have a lot of issues. So with that, I'm looking into kind of like startups and kind of the entrepreneurship sphere of like, you know, bringing tech to St. Louis and bringing tech that is helpful to St. Louis, but can also create jobs and kind of create an environment to kind of help St. Louis kind of get back on its feet, you know, because it has been struggling for the recent years. So that is one plan, but entrepreneurship is not the most stable of avenues. So I do have a backup plan, and that's kind of looking into, you know, kind of a more like research and development based engineering job.
Yeah, and you don't necessarily need a plan right now.
It's
just always interesting to hear what you might go into. We'll see. I have confidence that one of them will pan out, just not sure which ones yet. Which it's a little scary to not know where you're going, but also kind of exciting, right? If you know where you're going, why do it?
Well, I think it's really cool. I mean, we're talking about, you know, a little bit about where you're thinking about going and so forth, but, you know, the product development space and getting that feedback. You know, I mean, we're recording this on an iPhone, and, you know, we all know, like, in the tech space, you know, whether it's devices or websites, there's a lot of product development, user feedback, but there's so much more meaning when you have that kind of feedback when you're talking about devices that you're making that can actually, you know, directly impact people's lives at a different level. Does the iPhone impact people's lives? Absolutely. But, you know, it's different than maybe working on accessibility parts of the iPhone, the software, and so forth. And there's a lot of, you know, work going on in that space, you know, to make, you know, example like websites more, you know, accessible, friendly, and so it's terrific that you're getting that experience now.
It's definitely like technically a super cool experience, and I appreciate that, you know, kind of like resume booster style, but also it's been a fantastic like learning experience because like you mentioned, it is I think hopefully getting better as you know, designers are starting to get better at understanding that creating a product that can only be used by a very specific group and then later patching in accessibility features does not work well. So it's been a really good learning process. My advisor, Jenna Krolowitz, has been super, super integral in kind of, you know, passing down this design idea onto me, as well as our lab manager, Jen, of passing on this idea that, you know, you can universally design something from the beginning that is a good product, that is usable by a lot of different groups, that has a lot of different avenues for use, and it's overall, you know, universally acceptable. And in the end, that's just a better product for whoever it is, you know. Just, it doesn't matter who you are. A great example is like audio subtitles. Is like, you know, 10 or 15 years ago, I think they were branded as like audio subtitles for the hearing impaired or something like that. And then someone kind of had the great idea of like, this is kind of silly. Everyone could use this. So like they just kind of made it, you know, easier to find in the settings, and they changed the branding in a way where now I watch pretty much everything with subtitles. And just that experience to learn that, I don't know if I ever would have really understood that if I hadn't been able to work on a project like this, you know, in a lab like this where that environment very much incorporates these ideas of, design with people in mind first.
Yeah. I think one good example of accessibility for the disabled is good for everyone is like ramps. Like they're good for wheelchair users, but they're also good for like people with luggage. Something.
So it benefits everybody.
Yeah, a lot of things for people with disabilities benefit everybody.
Yeah, and it's that type of design definitely takes more work up front. Like it's not as easy as just making something, immediately and quick. Yeah. But also like I feel like it's pretty clear now that those, it matters. That design up front is worth it and it matters. So
Yeah. So, well, thank you for your time. Thank you for your interest in, it's your passion for, how you can, the technology and how it impacts people's lives, and the impact to this disabled hockey community. Thank you so much for that, and thank you for taking the time to talk with us today. It's been awesome to meet you.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
nice to meet you guys.
Thank you. All right. Well, that was a terrific conversation with Colton from St. Louis University, and Charlotte, that was, absolutely amazing what they're doing with the technology.
Yeah, the technology is really amazing, and I think if you get the chance to watch blind hockey, you should watch it. It's, as my brother would say, the loudest game he's ever watched, and it's amazing, like, how well they can play, and I think, and you'll get to hear more about blind hockey too.
We have we have a terrific interview with someone who is a blind hockey player, and not only is it amazing. Loud because of the puck, right? It has those ball bearings in there, but people are communicating. And,
they're always shouting because you can't you can't see each other. At most, they have put 10% vision, so you have to compensate with other senses, and the big one they use is sound.
Yeah.
So they're always shouting, and the puck is always rattling. So it's amazing, like, what they can do with. As a sighted people, you would be, for those who are out there who are sighted, you'll be amazed at how much they can do without sight. Because I know as a sighted person, I can't imagine what that's like to be able to do that without sight.
So
I know it's possible, but I can't imagine.
I know. I can't either. And it's terrific that there's people out there like Colton that have a passion for this.
Yeah.
To help with the technology. So. And
the technology, it's fascinating too.
Yeah. And so we have another interview, and so let's go straight to that and talk. We have a great guest from USA Hockey. And we have a special guest today from USA Hockey, and if you could please introduce yourself.
My name is Logan Spellman. I work at the USA Hockey National Office. I'm our intern in our disabled hockey department.
All right, and what brought you to USA Hockey?
So I'm in the Springs going to college, and I'm majoring in sport management, which is a business degree. So Colorado Springs is Olympic City, USA. There are tons of national governing bodies. USA Hockey is one of those. So I started at wheelchair basketball, National Wheelchair Basketball Association. That's where I first started anything career-wise then. I had an internship at USA Triathlon. I had one at the USOPC. I had one at Tokyo 2020. I've been to US Figure Skating, a few other places, and I went to USA Hockey. I never played hockey, but I guess I was super interested in what it was because I saw like disabled hockey internship opening. I thought that seemed super cool. So I applied, I got it, and then I'm so glad I did because it's been so eye-opening and stuff. And that's just the story of how I started.
Yeah. So you mentioned that it was eye-opening for you and being a part of the USA Hockey Disability Program. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, I'm obviously a hockey fan. I never played hockey, but I know hockey, the sport. And I never knew about anything disabled hockey. I'd seen sled hockey on TV with Paralympics. But to me, the nature of the internship with events and working with the teams is what I wanted to do. So before I even interviewed, I looked up everything on the website, and I just kept reading more and more and more and more and more. I wanted to really just make sure if I was going to get into this, I knew what I was doing. So I was watching blind hockey YouTube videos, special hockey YouTube videos, sled hockey equipment, the rules of sled hockey, the nature of warrior hockey, the adaptations of deaf hockey, everything I could. And the more I saw, the more I liked, and the more it perked my interest. And it was totally eye-opening, because when you think of blind hockey, for example, you're like, how the heck does that even happen? Mm-hmm. So, I knew hockey, but I guess I wasn't really aware of adaptive sports. And I guess the first wheelchair basketball thing I did, and then this disabled hockey, it's kind of a whole new world it brought me into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's awesome. Like, adaptive sports is, we had a conversation earlier today with someone from St. Louis University and how they help make some of the pucks that they used for blind hockey. And and then actually seeing it in practice, right? And actually seeing people playing and how it works. And you see, like, how fulfilling it is for the athletes and how meaningful it is for them.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I guess that's what makes it all worth it at the end, because this isn't on ESPN. It's not a mega sport event. It's really more about bringing how great hockey is as a sport to the players. It's all about the players and the families. I think these players with disabled hockey and the adaptive sports world, they go through so much more than a typical able-bodied player or family would ever go through, and so it makes it that much more special, 100%.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I don't know where I am.
Well, so you mentioned that you were in Pittsburgh, I guess, for the last one. Mm-hmm. And I'm not trying to compare Pittsburgh to St. Louis, but this is the Centene Center is fairly new to St. Louis, and this is one of the goals of why this was built, to help bring hockey to this community. What's your experience been like so far with this event?
It's been amazing. Pittsburgh was fun too. So this whole thing started in 2004, but so last year was Pittsburgh, and it was great. So St. Louis here, it's also great. The local host here is awesome. You mentioned Centene is newer. St. Louis has a huge, strong hockey community, but what's great about this event here in St. Louis, USA Hockey gets zero money from this event, period. They lose money from hosting these events. So St. Louis and Missouri Hockey, they get every registration dollar, everything goes straight to them. And they can't just put that in their back pockets. They are required by USA Hockey to put all that money into adaptive sports. So it's all going to cycle through and grow. So it's a nonprofit. USA Hockey is a nonprofit. And so St. Louis has really showed their plan to do it. Not that Pittsburgh did too, but St. Louis has extremely detailed what they're going to do. And there's room that they're giving for leeway too. So I think St. Louis has been a great host for a lot of reasons. And it's been a great event. We're 3 days into the event so far, and it's just been fabulous.
Awesome. Yeah, it's great to hear that the money is going back into the adaptive community, for sure. Yeah. Did you have anything, Charlotte? Yeah. Thinking about USA Hockey and working with in the disabled hockey programs, what are some of the things that we can see in the future, or some of the goals that USA Hockey is trying to accomplish?
Well, there's a few. I mean, I think with blind hockey, the ultimate goal is to make that a Paralympic sport in the Paralympics. Sled hockey is obviously in the Paralympics. Women's sled hockey in the Paralympics, which will be there very, very soon. The men's, obviously, team is so dominant. I don't really need to. I think everyone knows at this point how dominant they are. So blind hockey in the Paralympics, women's hockey in the Paralympics. But another goal that I think is more long-lasting is when rinks are built, they're not built with sled accommodations in mind, or at least so they weren't used to. Now, we were just in Anaheim for an event, and that rink was built with adaptive sled access in mind for that rink. And that shows that the future is being in mind for sled, and it's not really an adaptation anymore where they're fixing things to adapt to it. They're just building it for them.
Yeah.
So that is really the goal, is to have most every facility that's going to be built have it be built in mind with sled access. And what I'm talking about is from the benches, because sled, they can't step on and off the ice.
Yeah.
They go through, they have ice on the bench floor as ice. And it's really not that hard to build it that way. It's just you have to have it in mind.
Yeah.
So those are some of the goals. And then obviously just growth in membership and participation across the country. You know, you always want to keep things fresh too. You know, we don't want the same event to feel the same thing every year. And that's where bringing each city has their own flavor to it. But yeah, I mean, it's just disabled hockey won't ever go away. So that's the ultimate goal, is just keep it going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have anything? This has been a pretty amazing event so far. The one thing that we talked about with the St. Louis University Lab group, where they built the adaptive pucks for blind hockey, that was interesting, was we were talking about just that process of the product development, and one of the things that they're working on there is when they're looking at like adaptive technologies or accessible technologies, is and it aligns with what you were saying, is keeping that in mind when at the beginning when you're building something, whether that's an accessible website or an accessible arena. Is that something that you're working with? I know you mentioned that you saw this in Anaheim, but are you working with different communities, like where like they're building new facilities, or making sure or just kind of going through certain facilities, where there is more things like sled hockey to try to make those things happen?
Well, I think the blind puck is awesome. First off, the adaptation, and for anyone listening, I think just look into that, because it's a super cool thing that's happening. But as for kind of just sharing best practices across the country is sometimes easier said than done. We have a disabled hockey section, which is I believe it's over 35. I don't know the exact number of members, but it's all volunteer structured across the U.S. And so what I've learned from working in the national office at USA Hockey is there's only so much that USA Hockey from the national office in Colorado can do, because they can only do so much that the average rink owner in South Carolina, they can do whatever they want in that sense. So what we try to do is just share best practices. The disabled section is awesome because we have a representative in each of the districts of USA Hockey. We have representatives for each type of the discipline, so blind, deaf, special standing, warrior, and sled. So we have a dedicated person for all those. We have a chair to oversee it all. We have an officiating person, a coaching person, and they all can kind of share what they're doing. So we try to I think that's worked effectively, in just trying to help everyone grow. I mean, I think when before started, I was always told that people kept secrets from each other to try to not really tell them how they've maybe had a good program. Yeah. And I guess what I've seen in my 2-ish years here interning is a lot of the section and people across the country are sharing best practices, which is really how it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's next for you at USA Hockey, or even beyond? Like, what are you thinking about?
Well, like I said, when I was a high school kid and even a freshman in college, adaptive sports wasn't on my radar. I guess I graduate from college really in 50 days at this point.
Congratulations.
And thanks. And so I'd love to stay in the adaptive sports world. I'd love to stick on with USA Hockey. Yeah. I guess we'll see where things lead. Yeah. But I'd love to stay in the sports industry, and the adaptive sports industry definitely holds a special place in my heart. And I owe it all to USA Hockey and this internship. It's been fabulous.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Well, thanks for taking the time, to talk to us, and this has been a great conversation.
Yeah, and once we, stop recording on this audio thing, we can still, I'm happy to answer any questions about anything, because I could talk all day long about how cool it is. I really could.
Well, I guess one last thing is, maybe what are some ways that people can help? Like, how can they get connected to USA Hockey? What are some things that they could do?
we're not ever going to turn anyone away that wants to help. So, if you're in the area where we have an event, at least come see it for a day, because even if you don't play hockey, you'll be amazed within 30 seconds of watching them play. No matter what discipline it is, you'll be amazed at it. So, just do that. And even if it's not in town with you, look it up on YouTube. There's plenty of information out there, I think. But in terms of helping, just if you're interested in starting a program, just look up USA Hockey website, click around a bit, and you'll find our page and all. And there's email addresses on there. Okay. So just reach out. I think so many people are scared to try a disabled program and to try something different. Like, I don't want to try to make a special hockey program because I don't want to be trendy, and I want to do it for the right reasons. So actually, a lot of people are hesitant to start it, which to me is so backwards. The worst thing that can happen. So just if you're thinking about starting a program, believe me when I say that you'll have people that want to play because the population is out there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, Charlotte, you've seen that, within the spina bifida community. There's an appetite for people to get out and do things.
Yeah, I know so many wheelchair athletes.
Yeah. Yeah, so a lot of wheelchair athletes will play, wheelchair basketball in the summer and then sled hockey in the winter. It helps them in both sports, kind of like playing golf and baseball.
Yeah.
Each aspect will help you. So
that makes sense.
We see a lot of that, and but I think this whole interview is great. I'm curious to see what you've found out from doing it, because I guess I think it's great that you're doing this.
Yeah.
But why? What was your incentive to start doing it?
Yeah. Well, Charlotte, you want to talk a little bit about it?
I have spina bifida. I've had both defects I've had my whole life, but in 2019 I really got involved in the community, and I loved it. I never felt like I had that kind of community before.
Yeah.
And I quickly felt like I had a family, and I felt like I had a passion for advocacy. So I've grown to be a huge advocate for disabilities, particularly in the legislative world, but also in other ways. And I love hockey, and I love sports, hockey and baseball. And so I kind of grew. So I just combined the two. And
it's definitely inspiring.
And I also kind of like a little bit of attention, so I like the idea of putting something out there publicly that I'm involved in.
And there's definitely tension in hockey. These players in sled hockey, they play to win. They play rough. It's not all jolly goodness. People play hard. It's hockey. It's not, at the end, it's hockey. It's a tough game. So that's great.
I saw one game in the NHL the other day. Had a whole bunch of fights.
We just had a fight in a Warrior game not too long ago. So,
Well, thanks again.
Thank you for the time.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, awesome.
All right. Well, that was a terrific interview. That was Logan from USA Hockey. And again, we want to thank him for his time. And as with all of our interviewers, or interviewees, not us, interviewers, you know how to find us, but do you know how to find them? And we're going to make sure we have all of their information.
Yeah.
And ways that you can connect, like with USA Hockey, learn more about the SLU program, for examples. Or just some of the examples there. But
these are really great people, and I know they'd love to connect with you and share their passions with you.
Well, yeah, and speaking of passion, I think Logan, it was really, it was really amazing to see how his passion has grown for disabled hockey,
and how he's being just a part of helping USA Hockey make hockey more accessible to people with all kinds of disabilities.
Yeah, from all backgrounds, all kinds of backgrounds. Seeing that there's a really big commitment from USA Hockey.
Yeah.
To do that. I know they had a big presence at the event that we were at. He was one of many people there from USA Hockey, but he was, as soon as we mentioned we'd like to talk to someone, he about jumped out of his seat. So
and I know he's got a big journey ahead of him, and excited to have him as what sounds like a lifelong advocate for the disability community. I know.
Absolutely, and
We'll
so
see what he does.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm looking forward to that, and so we have another guest here. This is the last interview for this segment,
and the most exciting.
It's the most exciting. It was the most unexpected. Yeah,
it was the most unexpected and the biggest name.
Yeah, and so we have a special guest representing the St. Louis Blues, who the St. Louis Blues have played a big part in the community, and we'll touch on that a little bit after. But let's get to the interview. You'll really enjoy it. And with us today is the president and CEO of the St. Louis Blues, Chris Zimmerman. Thank you for coming, Mr. Zimmerman.
Yeah, no, thanks. I'm thrilled to run into you guys and hear about your story. But this is a really special event. There's really no other team sport where you bring together people, battling this many different things and able to play our game and come together. And it's so thrilled to be out here and seeing what's happening here.
Yeah, and we're thrilled to have your support and that you would take the time to come out here for this.
Just if you could tell us a little bit about, for people who may not know, but how long have you been with the Blues?
Yeah, sure. I've been with the Blues since 2014, just completing my 9th season with the St. Louis Blues. It's been an amazing journey for me, obviously including our Stanley Cup victory in 2019.
Yeah,
this season is just about to end in a couple weeks, and for us, and without making the playoffs, a tough year, but one in which we understand where we are and the types of things we need to evolve our team and get back to competing for the cup.
Yeah, every team has their highs and lows.
And I imagine the season's just ending, but it's pretty much nonstop for the folks in the front office like yourself and others.
Yeah, I think the off season is one of the great misnomers for people who work in the business of sports. We work year round, and in many ways, the off season is actually probably the more important time because it's when we're working on all of our ticketing programs, sponsors, new marketing. So, we have the season will end, and I assure you that we are well into planning for next year.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. And one thing that so we've we're here at the disability tournament. You have a lot of responsibilities as the president and CEO of the Blues organization. Tell me why it's important for the Blues to be involved in projects like this.
So, first of all, this facility, we're at the Centene Community Ice Center. We built it really for it to be a hub for hockey in the Midwest, and in many ways wanting it to be one of the preeminent facilities in the country to attract events like this. So we've worked hard with USA Hockey and other entities at bringing these events, but the Disabled Hockey Festival, I think, is just an amazing event in that it is a chance for teams from all over the country to compete, whether it's in some really unique forms of competition. It's, of course, there's a blind hockey division, there's deaf hockey, special hockey, and so really a chance for people fighting different disabilities to express themselves and come together through the sport of hockey. I can't imagine anything that, quite honestly, would be much more important.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. What kind of growth have you? And so, being here today, it's hard we're doing this as a podcast, but it's amazing. There's so many people coming around here. You talked about it being a hub for hockey for everyone. But what kind of growth have you seen specifically in the Blues supporting the disabled hockey community in the St. Louis area?
Well, I think I think all of the programs that are here, and particularly the ones in most of the divisions, there are Blues branded teams, whether that be blind hockey or special hockey. And really the most recent one we got involved in was Warrior Hockey, which is for veterans, and particularly veterans who have had different challenges. I will tell you that having gotten involved several years ago and seeing, I believe they have well over 100 players, and I think maybe even a waiting list to get into the program. And occasionally I'll get letters about players involved in the program where they've mentioned that in many ways their ability to be part of that team, part of that really community, has actually been life-saving for them. And so, it's those types of things that when our sport can play that role, and obviously when the Blues can play a small role in that and facilitating that, that's part of the gift of our game.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Thinking about like where you're going in the future, what are some of the goals with the Blues in supporting disability hockey and the hockey community in general in St. Louis? Yeah,
I think that for us, the NHL for some time has been working to make our game more inclusive. We use the banner, hockey is for everyone. I think that this weekend is obviously a great example of it. Our goals for the future are to continue to get more and more kids exposed to the game, kids, adults, people of all ages and gender, to connect with our sport. I think we have a unique opportunity here in that being part of a hockey team and doing it at all ages, and even when fighting certain disabilities, that we seem to be doing that in a way no other team sport is, and that's a gift we'll continue to keep working to broaden.
Yeah, it feels like we were in the Plager rink, and we were just watching some blind hockey, and you see the banners from all of the clubs in the area that play here, and we've seen. I grew up. It's been a long time since I've lived in St. Louis, but the hockey community has grown so much in the St. Louis area, especially from an amateur perspective. And it feels like, like you mentioned, hockey is for everyone. And there's a big focus on that the disability side of that. We're starting to see that growth now, in that community as well, which is terrific.
Yeah, I think it's just yes, hockey. Hockey came to St. Louis in 1967. There was one hockey rink in St. Louis at the time. Now, I think probably we have 28 ice sheets across the region, and the game is growing at all levels. You're seeing both at the very highly competitive levels, players like the Kachuk brothers, Clayton Keller, Logan Brown, lot more and more kids out of St. Louis becoming NHL players. So, a lot of that driven by the Blues alumni, which has a very strong presence here. And I think that Blues hockey has just become a very, a really vital part of our community. And we try to make a difference in multiple ways. And obviously the work of growing our game and growing the exposure through disabled hockey is something we're really proud of.
Yeah, that's fantastic. One thing I wanted to make a comment on, and I read this, I think it was after, I think it speaks to the inclusivity for everyone, just for the Blues, but it was after, I think, the Outdoor Winter Classic, and there were some articles about how the NHL really loved working with the Blues for big events, that you stood out. All the other teams are fantastic, but just that you welcomed in the NHL team, they felt like they were part of the Blues organization from day one, and pulling off a big event like that, and just when you say that, it seems like it speaks to the inclusivity within the organization.
Well, that's really kind. Listen, what we get to do is a gift. That we get to represent our city, that we have the resources to bring great events like the Winter Classic and the All-Star Game to St. Louis, the NHL events team that we work with on things like that is amazing. And, we hope to continue to bring more big events to St. Louis. We love working with USA Hockey. The World Juniors is a great event for the top 20-year-old and under players in the world. We certainly are going to put our hat in the ring and hopefully maybe get a chance to host that amazing event in the near future.
That would be great.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Well, I really want to thank you for your time, and we really appreciate it. And on behalf of I know it's important. Charlotte has a lot of emotions and feelings around the support for people with disabilities. So it's important to our family, and we thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you for what you're doing and the work on the podcast. What a great way to tell the story.
Yeah, we want to combat the phrase "stick to sports" because sports are life, and you can't really separate sports and life. So.
Well, you can imagine as someone who has spent most of the last 30 years working around sport, how much that warms my heart. So thanks so much for what you're doing.
Thank you, Chris. We appreciate it. Take care. Well, Charlotte, that was amazing.
Certainly unexpected. You never know who you'll meet by just going to these events. Like, we just happened to run into him.
Yeah. And he was extremely warm and gracious with his time. We haven't done many interviews. We're still, can count on one hand, maybe two at the most.
Yeah, he would have been on our Gold Star, list of, we don't think we'll ever get them. But they're on our dream list.
Yeah.
And we just happened to run into him.
Yeah. That worked out. That worked out really well. And I think towards the end of the conversation, Charlotte, you mentioned something about how you get frustrated sometimes when people say stick to sports, and there's a variety of reasons and different conversations around that. And when we're talking to someone whose livelihood and has spent a lifetime in the sports space, how much that meant to him, to hear that. It's we often forget, players and the staff and the front office and everybody, right, that supports these teams. And, they go home after work just like we do. Mm-hmm. They have families and they're part of this community. And I think it's, you see a very heavy blues presence, St. Louis blues presence here at the Disabled Festival. I think we saw a few teams, right? For sure. Was it blind hockey? I believe. We also saw the special hockey team.
Yeah.
And this, little history for our listeners. I believe in the mid to late 90s, the Blues kicked off one of the first, if not the first, special hockey program, Gateway Locomotive, in the United States. Yeah. And I believe there may have been one in Canada.
Yeah.
But then it went nationwide.
And Blues special hockey has going to be so huge now.
It is. And I think we'll hear in the next conversation some of the coaches talking about how big it's getting in other areas too, outside of St. Louis.
Yeah. And you got Blues Warrior Hockey now, which has 100 players, and
in a wait list.
4 different levels, and a wait list so big that they've created the I don't remember what they called it, but the social team, I think, where the players can even if they don't have space for them to play, they can still hang out with other people who've gone through the same things they've had.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
we'll hear more about roller hockey in part 2.
Yeah, and it's, just, a tip of the cap to the Blues organization for being a big part of this event. I think Chris Zimmerman touched on that the Centene Ice Center was built for things like this, and more to come, like the World Juniors.
Yeah.
And I think it's fantastic to see disabled hockey rise significantly in popularity in the St. Louis area, not only in the St. Louis area, but in other areas too. And the Blues have been a big part of helping to push that in the community.
Yeah. And I know none of these people can separate sports, and specifically hockey, from their life. Like, hockey is their life.
Well, and I think what we're going to see, or we're going to hear in other conversations, is how important it is to the players.
Yeah.
To have the various adaptive technologies or accessibility opportunities to play hockey and what it means to them.
And talking about going just a little tidbit, we'll be maybe talking a little bit about going hockey around the world.
Yeah. So this is, tuned. There were players here from all over the world, which is fantastic. So that concludes part 1, and stay tuned. Part 2 is coming up, where we dig into coaches, parents, and players.
Yeah.
So those were some terrific conversations.
So, yep. I'm pretty excited for part 2.
Yeah, me too.
We talked to some great people.
Yeah, I'm really excited to share that with our audience. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.